Hello, Dr. Crystal Gifford here today, and welcome to Tower of Faith. Today, we're going to talk a brief message about when your faith feels limited. Have you ever felt like you've tried everything and it's not working, or perhaps you've given everything, you've gone all in, and it seemed like it was working, and it even your hopes got up, and you started to tell people, and you finally embraced it, and all of a sudden, you feel ashamed because perhaps it didn't work out like you said. And maybe you even proclaimed your faith in front of people. Maybe you kept it to yourself. But most importantly, perhaps you've been in a situation where you've had faith and right now you don't. And I want to talk to you about moments where faith can be limited and how to overcome that. So, I first want to talk to you about what faith is. So for me, faith has been an interesting journey because there's so much involved with what faith could be and how it could show up in our lives. And I'm going to share with you a vulnerable story today of when it seems impossible, right? Faith is just limited. Like, how far can faith really go with me specifically in this journey? And it was, let's see, it would be 2009. My son Braden was 9 years old, and I worked a lot at the time, and I would drive 2 hours each way to and from work. And so I'm coming home from work one day, and his dad informs me that he's not really doing well. He just doesn't feel well, has a little bit of a fever, and he has a couple of bumps on his belly. Okay, oh, this isn't good. So we go to the emergency room because what's going on? He's breaking out. We think we're going for chickenpox. Now, he's already had chickenpox. They told us to bring him in because something's wrong with his oxygen levels. But the chickenpox really shouldn't be a big deal. But just in case, let's go check. Uh, what seems like a whirlwind, and several hours later, I stand in front of this beautiful doctor. I'm 5'4", so she was around 5'1", so rather short, uh, darker skin, most likely from India, based on the conversation that we had. I did not get to ask her, but beautiful skin. I remember her. She, to me, looked like an angel. And all I know is we came in with my son we thought chicken pox. And now here stands in front of me, for some reason, this woman that I see as an angel. And she says to me, I really think we should put your son in ICU. I don't understand. ICU, chicken pox. I call my friend Jay. He was a physician. I'm like, Jay, do it. He said, well, it can't hurt to have more care. Okay, Crystal, just say yes. Okay, so I say yes. And I'm looking at this, and the woman, this beautiful angel, she comes out and she speaks to me again. And she says, we've done everything. We can't get his oxygen levels up. We really think we should intubate. Now, remember, 25 or 7 hours before that, I picked up my son and met him and took him to the hospital because he had chicken pox. So now we're sitting here, it's the middle of the night, 20 some hours later, and they want to intubate. I don't understand, but something in my heart said, this woman, trust this woman. And so I said, okay, then I don't understand what's happening, but yes, let's do it. Whatever it takes to keep Braden alive and to keep him safe. And as they go in to intubate and I step out of that space, I had just sent his dad a little bit before that to rest, and there's nothing we can do. So I let him sleep, and I hadn't been going to church per se, I'd say at the time. I don't recall if I still would go, but I certainly wasn't part of the tradition I had grown up with at this time. So God was like, still confusing. It was a confusing ground, a confusing situation for me. I had come through a void, started to reconnect to God my own way, and what I now had this expanded version of what I see God to be. And yet I had this at least dialogue, because for 3 years I hadn't had a dialogue. So here I am on the edge of that moment where my faith is just now like rebooting. If anybody remembers the old internet, the sounds and those booting up the computer, my faith was rebooting. I was not there. I had not found any of my own practices, anything that helped me to connect to that God force. And here I am, and my son is being intubated, and I don't know what to do. And I already have prayed over my son. And I believe in my heart that when I pray, it is not to continue to go back and keep begging, because that means I don't believe you did it. And so I prayed, and the conviction, the feeling, just the power comes on my body when I think about it. And I said, this is not what you have for my son. And I demand, with authority of everything that has ever been given to me and everything I've ever learned, right or wrong, it does not matter, but that every force, everything, every divine entity, everything come in and support my son in this case. And I prayed with fervor. I prayed with delight, just thanking God. Thank you for saving my son. Thank you for being true. And as I began to just relax back, and I had said my prayers, and I know better than to go in and ask again. I thought, well, what do I do now? Because I'm still waiting. And I began to remember my favoritist of favoritist stories in the entire Bible. And I'm going to tell you the crystallized version of this, because my memory on details, not something I use my brain for. The concept and what it means is where my energy goes. And so if I can share with you my favorite story, and then I'll tell you what happened with Braden. It's good news. You don't have to worry, but I will tell you the miracles that transformed to have that good news. And so I sat there, and I sit back, and I just begin, okay, what do I know? Well, I know this. There was a woman, and she met a man named Elisha. And Elisha was a man of God, a proclaimed, professed man of God. And Elisha had promised this woman a son. And this woman had a son. Many years later, and I imagine by the way the story's told in the Bible, he's like a teenager-ish, right? We don't know a lot of details in the story, so it's fascinating. I want to bring this forward and tell you this. It's so fascinating. So this woman comes, and she sees her son, and this is the son, her promise from God, and he's dead. She's in her home, and her son is dead. He says, my head, my head. This is the information we have from the scripture in the text in the scripture. My head, my head. And then he goes. He dies. And here is a woman, a mother, with her dead son. And she says, oh, no, he didn't. God gave me a promise. And I'm not letting any devil in hell take away my promise. And she marches out that door. And she says, the first person sees her, the boy's dad, and how is the boy? It shall be well. She tells him, it shall be well. She makes her first declaration. She steps in faith in a time and a season when her life is limited, when her son is dead in a bed, and she says, it shall be well. And when I read that story, I feel it in my spirit. I can feel the power, the energy of this mother who says, I don't care what this world is showing me. I don't care that my son is dead in a bed. That is not where my faith ends. My faith may be limited in this moment, but I will not be limited. I will have my son. And she continues on. And as she approaches the field where Elisha is, out comes his servant. And I'm going to tell you this my way. And here comes the servant. And he says, hey, how's your boy? And she says, it is well, but I need Elisha. And I can see this mother like, yeah. I don't have time for your small talk. It is well, moving on. I don't have time for your doubt. I don't have time for your reasons that it won't work. I don't have time to tell you the details because your doubt does not have a place in this room. I need Elisha. I have a promise and I am holding on to that promise. You will not take that promise from me. This is my promise. Give me Elisha. And as the story goes, Elisha comes and he honors the woman and he returns to the home with her. Because Elisha, you see, did not have limited faith. He had direct contact with his God. And this mother who said, I don't care about limitations. I don't care what life is showing me. I do not care what other people have experienced. My son will live. My son will live. And I don't know who is watching this right now, who will see this later, who will know that your son will live, your daughter will live. We will live because the promise has been made, because we have given it to ourselves, because we have declared it into the universe, because we have relied on the divine forces that are ours, and that because we have claimed it and held with certainty, you will live. And so Elisha returns with the woman. And as the story goes, Elisha laid his body upon the child 7 times. And on the 7th time, the boy arose and he lived. And that mother, I always looked at her, and this was always my favorite story in the Bible. Like, as long as I could remember, I was like, oh my gosh, to be a mother, to have your son dead in front of you. In today's terms, maybe it's to be a mother, to think it's all hope is lost. All chances are done. I already used up all that I had for my kids. They're grown. What difference can I make now? It doesn't matter what I do. Maybe it never mattered. Maybe I couldn't have. I wish I would have. Why couldn't I? None of that means anything. Because in this moment, we get to choose. And how did that mother in that moment, instead of the hope, instead of the despair and the death that others would speak to her, how did she hold on to hope? How did she say, oh no, this is not a hope thing, this is a faith thing. And let me tell you, when my faith is activated, my life is changed. How did she go so deep to believe so much? And my heart would always question this. How did that mother reach so deep? How did her faith go so deep? Her son was dead, but she didn't care. She was not hearing any of that. Her testimony went further than that. She said, my son shall live. And Elisha said, your son shall live, and I will be that vessel that brings forth that juice, that igniting force to let your son continue to live. Now think about the impossible. The impossible has been done here. Not only did her son die, and I was raised in a church where people did come back from the dead. I have seen it with my own eyes, where people came in blind with canes, the whole works, cannot see, and they walked out of there seeing. I've been there. But I never thought that I could have that faith that that mother had. Until there I was in that hospital. My son is now intubated. Immediately after, there's something called a leak. And once you intubate, there should be some leak, some separation between the trachea and the tube. His leak was 0. That doctor saved his life. That beautiful angel that just said, I just really feel like the best thing we can do for your son right now is intubate. She saved his life. And that was her last night on the job. You don't think that angel was sent there for my baby? I know so. And so as I sat there and I began to build around my son's room a vortex, a shield, a bubble, and I said, only faith is allowed in this room. Only deliverance, only healing, only God, only light, only love, only music, only the heart that knows that this is the time when God gets to prove himself to me. And while I have all kinds of wavering ideas about the details of what God really is, what will never leave me is knowing that in that hospital, when my son needed me to, faith came up inside of me, and it came from a place that I didn't know I had. I didn't go get it and be strong. It's not because I was so good or so wholesome or so wonderful. I was completely confused. Still am completely confused sometimes with this God stuff. But I had faith, and that faith didn't need me to do anything. Just believe. And so as the story goes on, I was that kind of mama bear protective as Braden continued his 2-week journey in the hospital. We were in an infectious disease area, and then the burn unit. He has a rare condition called Stevens-Johnson syndrome. It probably was caused by antibiotics they gave me while he was being born, triggered by Motrin. So parents, pay attention to ask. Ask before the doctors just give you everything. Go here. Go here in your gut. Go in your heart. Look it up for yourselves. We're empowered to do that. And Braden did have a miraculous recovery. In fact, he was on this intubation table for about a week when things started to resolve. And, people would bring in stories about what this condition could bring. And I would say, take that out of my son's room. And boldness would rise up in me. And we sang, and he was doing a little skit with his church they did a hands of praise, and they would do sign language. And I remember like the power of the Lord is here, I think. And so we would do that. And I played that song, The Power of the Lord is Here. The power of the Lord is here. And over and over. And the Spirit of the Lord is here. And I don't even know all the rest of the song anymore, but that's something he connected to. So I played that song over and over and over. And what I want you to understand from that is in that time, it wasn't about me. It wasn't about who did what and what carried what. It was about faith stepping up. And all I did is allow that faith to use me as a vessel. Because my baby deserved that. My baby needed that. And I was going to be that for him. And so sometimes when faith seems limited, don't try to be your own faith. Just stop. Just stop and remember that faith is a gift. And you don't have to follow the Bible to realize that faith, belief from your heart, from your soul, that belief that is from a deep understanding and knowing, that's free. It's a gift. And whenever you want it, you just activate it from within inside you. It's already there, dormant perhaps, if you haven't flexed it a little. And so if I can close with this one idea, and that is this, a challenge perhaps. Find something this week where you can measure a little bit of faith, that mustard seed, that one grain of faith. Find one place in your life this week where you can exercise that faith. Do something a little scary. Don't be attached to the outcome. Just take a leap. Take a leap of faith. Call someone that you don't think would want to speak to you. If you have a business, call that ideal customer that you only could wish you could ever get, but you just call them anyway. Never know what will happen. Go to a hospital, visit someone, and believe with them for their healing. Go visit someone who's tired or alone, perhaps elderly or incapacitated, can't get out of the house. There's so much you can do to increase your faith, and it can help so many others along the way. So I leave you with that. Go do some act of faith. Don't try to be the faith, just exercise it. It's already a gift inside of you that my baby, after 2 weeks of recovery, got to go home. These blisters all over his body, all the way up to the eyes, never touched his eyeballs. Some were trying to call in to say, oh, that boy could be blind. And I said, he shall not. He shall see. Others said, oh, but that condition can cause organ failure. And I said, it shall not. He shall be well. They said, oh, his skin will never recover. And he has this beautiful, clear skin today. The scarring is not even visible except when he gets in a lot of bright sunlight without sunscreen, which he needs to not do anyway. I love you guys. I'm so happy to share this story. I've never really told it outwardly before. And there are so many elements of it. I know I promised to keep these Monday chats aroundish 20 minutes, so I'm going to wrap that up here. But my baby's safe. He's 22 now at the time that I'm recording this, and all is well. It really, really is well. Limited faith doesn't mean anything about you. It just means it's time for you to let it work. Let the faith work for you. You don't have to do a thing, baby. Just hold the faith. Hold the faith no matter how small, no matter how limited it may feel in this moment, no matter how impossible it may seem that this could ever work out. Hold that faith. Until then, may this tower of faith shine a light into your life and bring you the peace, hope, joy, and deliciousness that you choose to be in the world. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Bye.